from a personal point of view, why are you personally so interested in Muslim, Black Muslim heritage and history?
That's a beautiful question. I think, I was talking about the importance of one's own story, and I suppose it's just because of my own life experience. Having worked as a school teacher in Rotherham, I found myself as a teaching volunteer in Upper Egypt and lived in a rural Islamic society for several years. Had to learn some Arabic to do that. And so both my pupils and many of my friends who are still close to me, are Muslims. And then coming back to Britain, I've just worked always in parts of London where my colleagues and my pupils have been from various Islamic heritages, and some of my closest friends are Muslims, so that my kind of, what I've received from them and we've shared is part of my own story. So, I'm not Muslim myself, but we absorb truths and warmth and strength from the people closest to us, and I guess that's my reason. And that includes the pupils that I've worked with, and many of them have become my friends.
So you're kind of like the George Galloway of education.
I don't think I can say anything to that.
Let me just say.
I did come in a hat.
Let me just say that sometimes what I find, full of people who are not Muslim, full of enthusiasm, they actually increase other people who are Muslim sense of, well, if this man who isn't even Muslim feels so deeply, then maybe we have to reassess our own sense of ourselves. So I think maybe that's one of the biggest jobs that you can do.
Thank you. And I would perhaps add to that those things always work in both directions. And I've been strengthened in my sense of myself by the by understandings from people that I've been close with in the same way.
So the next question, please.
Hiya. I'm just considering the current political crisis that we're in and the attitudes towards Muslims. So it's hard enough to try and get Black history taught in schools and Black British history taught in schools. So in your opinion, what do you think is the best way that we can sort of overcome it so that Muslim stories are actually taught perhaps nationwide?
I don't know if I can answer the best way. I think in the end, a really important, if you're talking specifically about working schools and in mainstream schools, then an important first step, and I'm a history teacher, is going to be for history, and I would say primarily young training history teachers with the energy to know those histories and to know them and to make sure that they are part of what they teach. That is something that several of us are involved with trying to do. There's a new GCSE history syllabus that has started this academic year, and in 3 of the 4 courses that students in England have to study, the migration to Britain is an option. It's only an option, but is an option that can be chosen to be taught by schools as an exam GCSE course. And within that history of migration to Britain, of course, is British Muslim history. And all of those examples in the speech I gave last year are part of that story and are within the official textbooks for that. Now, what we're trying to do is that those of us who are involved with pushing that schools should teach that, and some schools now are, including some schools in London and across the country, and some in quite surprising places like rural Gloucestershire and Malden in Essex, to all white communities. What we're trying to do is work primarily with trainee teachers. So I, for example, have been doing sessions with both the Teach First students and the PGCE students at the Institute of Education. I'm going to be doing something similar at Middlesex University shortly and in Leicester shortly. And I do know that I think that the reality is that it's a long process, but it is those enthusiastic, young, open teachers starting out and doing all that hard work, that as long as teachers in schools begin to know that history and be confident in it and to understand how without it we do not have a British history, we can start to make change. It's a slow process. We had another example right across the whole of London. FE colleges, places like City and Islington College and Hackney College recently had a week. It was a week looking at because of the present climate, at immigration. But within that, these histories were beginning to be taught. But I'm not confident it's going to happen very quickly, but it is beginning to, I hope.
You also mentioned like the importance of oral family and communal history.
Yes.
And just, do you have any practical ways that families and like guardians and parents can get involved?
Well, I mean, the first stage, and I think this is, back to I made this link in time with the stories of what happened in many British, African, Caribbean families around Black history. And what happened was that parents educated themselves of the story and they passed those stories on to their children. And they didn't wait for school institutions to maybe get there or maybe never get there. So I think the first thing is that we ourselves, all of us, Muslim, non-Muslim, whoever we are, we need to learn that history ourselves. We need to be aware of it ourselves. And then we, all of us, surely have a responsibility to ensure that our children and any children that we know are also aware of that history. And sometimes it's question marks. I mean, the first Black British person whose picture and name resident in Britain we definitely have was a man called John Blank, who was a trumpeter for King Henry VIII. And David Olusoga's series on Black British history recently told his story. And his story is out there, the pictures are out there, they're in the textbooks we've written for the GCSE courses, which is one good start actually, those books. Now, in the images and the Westminster Rolls of the events, the great tournaments that Henry VIII organised after the birth of his son who didn't survive, John Blank appears with all the other trumpeters wearing a head covering which looks like a turban. For that reason, there is a question that we think it is likely that he may have come from North Africa, he may have come from Spain, and he may have been a Muslim who arrived first of all through an Arabian. We don't know the answer to that, but it raises the question through a very, very formal, official image of the presence of a Muslim as a trumpeter to King Henry VIII in the early 1500s. Open that out and you start to see stories of African Muslims who are definitely here. Ones we know of, a woman called Mary Figgis, a man called Reasonable Black Man, and people that we know came from North Africa or from recently conquered Andalus in Spain. Now, those are stories, those are fascinating stories, those are stories we can share with our children, but we have to know them first. So we have a responsibility, I think, first of all, to study.
So that wraps it up. If you've got any other questions for Martin, just keep them in mind and we'll come back to